She arrived before the sun rose, when the building was still quiet and the city outside was half asleep. The halls smelled of old polish and yesterday work, and the lights flickered on one by one as she pushed her small cart forward. She wore a simple uniform that had been used by many before her, and her shoes were already worn but clean. She moved slowly, not from weakness but from habit. She liked to observe before acting, and to understand a place before trying to belong in, if this job was new to her and she needed it badly, not because she lacked skills or ambition, but because life had taught her to start. Again, more than once, she believed that honest work was never small work, and cleaning gave her something solid to hold on to. Each floor had its own rhythm, and she learned it quietly. The early shift workers walked fast and spoke little, some nodded. Others did not even look at Irby. Mid-morning, the building woke up fully, voices echoed from offices, and laughter spilled into the hallways. That was when she first noticed the stairs. A group near the break area watched her as she emptied bins and wiped counters. Their smiles were thin, and their eyes followed every move. She kept her focus on the floor and her hands. She had learned long ago that silence often protected more than words. At lunchtime, she sat alone in a corner of the staff room. She unpacked a simple meal and ate slowly, enjoying the calm moment. A few seats away, the same group whispered and glanced in her direction. She heard pieces of their talk, but pretended not to. Words like cleaner and slow drifted toward her. She did not react. She finished her meal, folded her bag, and stood up with steady hands. Over the next few days, the small comments grew louder. They laughed when she passed. They exaggerated their movements when she cleaned near them, as if she were in the way. One of them left a mess on purpose near her cart and watched to see if she would complain. She did not. She simply cleaned it again and moved on. Her calm seemed to confuse them at first, but then it amused them. Some coworkers noticed what was happening. A few looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Others shook their heads and walked away. The building was full of people. Yet she often felt invisible. That did not hurt her as much as it once would have. She had spent years being overlooked and had learned to find strength in her own presence. She arrived earlier than needed. She liked the quiet time when no one watched her and no one judged. She took pride in her work, making sure every surface shone and every corner was clean. She treated the building with care as if it were her own home. That care came from who she was, not from the job title she carried. One afternoon, as she wiped a long glass wall, she heard laughter behind her. Someone mocked the way she held the cloth. Another copied her slow steps. She paused for a moment, then continued, without turning her face, stayed calm, but inside she noted every voice and every word. She did not forget things as yet. The end of the day, she signed out quietly and stepped into the evening air. The city noise wrapped around her. She walked to the bus stop and sat down, letting the day settle in. Her mind, she did not feel angry. She felt patient, like someone waiting for the right time to speak. At home, she wrote in a small notebook. She did this every night. She recorded times, places, and small details, not to seek revenge, but to keep the truth clear. Her writing was neat and careful. She believed that facts spoke louder than emotion, and she trusted facts. The week went on. The bullies grew bolder. They made jokes louder and closer. They called out to her across the hall, using words that reduced her to her job. She still did not answer. Some thought she did not understand. Others thought she was afraid. They were wrong on both counts. There were moments when she caught her reflection in the glass walls. A tired woman looked back at her, but also a strong one. She remembered other rooms, other uniforms, other days when people had underestimated her. Those memories did not break her. They reminded her of what she had survived. By the end of the first week, everyone knew who she was. The new cleaner who never spoke, the one who never complained, the one the bullies thought was harmless. She pushed her cart through the hall one last time that day and smiled softly to herself, not because she enjoyed what was happening, but because she knew something they did not. This place was just another chapter. She had learned long ago that the quiet beginning of a story often hides the strongest turning point. The second week began with a heavier weight in the air. The cleaner arrived. Earlier than usual, as she had done every day, she pushed her cart quietly through the hallways, observing each corner and listening to the hum of machines and the soft voices of early workers. She felt the rhythm of the building and the small movements. That everyone else missed the group of bullies had grown more confident. They waited for her near the elevators and in the stairwell. Their laughter echoed when she passed by, and they whispered words that were meant to sting. She did not look at them. She moved slowly and steadily, following the path she had planned for the day. Each sweep of her cloth and each push of her mop was precise and careful. One of the bullies left a spill near the office entrance and stepped back to watch her reaction. She noticed it immediately. She did not sigh or frown. She bent down and cleaned the mess with patience. She folded the cloth with careful hands and continued her path. They expected her to react with frustration or anger, but she remained calm there. Smirks faltered for a moment, and then they laughed even louder, thinking it was a game. During the lunch break, she sat at the same corner of the staff room. Her food was simple, and she ate slowly, savoring each bite. She noticed the glances and the whispers around her, but chose not to respond. She had learned early that some battles were won with silence and observation. Her eyes scanned the room and recorded every face, every word, every motion. She wrote nothing yet, but stored everything in her memory. A few coworkers tried to speak with her. They asked about her day or offered small advice. She thanked them softly and nodded, but did not reveal too much about herself.
Ow.
She had learned that trust had to be earned and not given freely. Some nodded politely and walked away, while others returned to their work looking slightly embarrassed for even trying. The bullies were relentless. They pushed her carts aside on purpose and made jokes about her uniform they tripped small obstacles into her path to see her stumble. She did not falter. She simply adjusted her steps and continued her work. Their confidence began to show cracks as they realized her composure could not be broken by simple games. Their amusement was fading into mild confusion. In the afternoon, she cleaned the floors near the conference rooms. She heard the bullies whispering behind the closed doors. Their voices were low but sharp. She pretended to focus on the floor, but in truth she listened carefully, noting the words and timing of their speech. She had learned that small details often revealed intentions and weaknesses. She found small moments of peace by opening windows and letting the sunlight touch her face. She enjoyed the warmth and the brief escape from the tension. She remembered other places she had worked and the people she had met and survived. Her mind was calm and focused, and she felt a quiet strength growing within her. She knew that this moment of tension was temporary and that she had control over herself. One day, a file was left deliberately on the floor. As she entered an office, the bullies hid nearby, hoping to see her trip. She stepped carefully around it and glanced at the paper without touching it. She knew exactly whose file it was and why it was there. She did not need to react. They would think she was unaware, but she had learned to observe without revealing knowledge. Her evening routine was the same. She signed out quietly and walked to the bus stop. The streets were busy and loud, but she felt calm. She did not carry anger or resentment. She only carried awareness and patience. She thought about the next day and what might happen, but she did not worry. She had faced challenges before, and she could face these too. At home, she wrote in her small notebook every detail she remembered from the day. The words were neat and careful. She wrote the actions, the words, the timing. She knew these records would be important. She also wrote small observations about people. She noticed patterns and tendencies and knew that patience would help her when the time to respond came. By the end of the week, the bullies were getting restless. They laughed less and whispered more. The cleaner noticed it, but did not change her routine. She pushed her cart with steady hands and quiet confidence. She cleaned each surface with care. She knew that they expected her to react, and that their strength came from seeing her upset. She gave them nothing. She caught a glimpse of herself in a reflective window. A woman with tired eyes but strong posture looked back at her. She remembered her past struggles and felt a surge of calm. She knew that patience and observation were her weapons, and that the bullies had not realized her strength yet. Her calmness was not weakness. It was strategy. She had learned long ago that people who underestimated others often revealed their true selves. The bullies were showing their impatience. Their arrogance was growing as they believed their actions mattered more than her composure. She let them believe it. Each evening, she went through the routine of review and reflection. She documented nothing impulsively. She organized her thoughts and built clarity. She knew that one day these notes would show the truth, and that the day she acted would be the day their actions were finally stopped. By the time the second week ended, the building had settled into a rhythm with her as part of it. The bullies were still there, but their movements were slightly more cautious. They were beginning to notice that she was not like anyone else. They could not provoke her, and that puzzled them. She walked home quietly and felt a quiet determination that the coming days bring more than just cleaning. An observation: by the third week, the cleaner had learned more about the building and the people in it. She moved with quiet confidence and knew when to stay out of sight and when to observe more closely. The group of bullies still tried to provoke her, but their methods were becoming predictable, and she noticed every small detail of their actions and movements. Surely one morning, she arrived to find that a few papers had been scattered across the hall near the elevators. She paused for a moment and studied the pattern. She recognized the handwriting from the previous week and knew it was deliberate. She bent down slowly, picking up each sheet and arranging them carefully. She did not show any emotion, but inside she cataloged the act and its intent. During the mid-morning rush, the bullies cornered her near the stairwell. They made mocking gestures and called out comments meant to humiliate her. She continued her work without reacting. Each movement was careful and deliberate. She kept her eyes on the floor and her hands on the cart. They expected anger or frustration, but she gave them nothing. They started to feel the first hints of unease because their games did not affect her as they thought they would. She discovered small ways to make her work smoother. She organized supplies to minimize interruptions and cleaned spaces in a sequence that allowed her to anticipate the movements of employees. She found quiet corners to rest for a moment and observed the bullies from a distance. She noticed their timing and the way they communicated with each other. She began to understand the hierarchy and their patterns. One afternoon, a coworker from another department approached her and asked if she was okay. The cleaner smiled softly and nodded. She said little and listened. She had learned to trust cautiously. She observed the coworker and understood the intention behind the question. The small gestures of kindness gave her hope that not everyone was indifferent or cruel. The bullies grew impatient. They started taking more risks and leaving obstacles in her path. They tried to block her way and make her stumble. She navigated carefully each time and took note of the times and methods. She realized they were relying on repetition and habit. She was patient and understood that patience could reveal weaknesses in those who acted without thought. At lunch, she sat in her usual corner. Her food was simple but nourishing. She enjoyed the quiet moments and watched the interactions of others. She noticed small details like gestures and facial expressions that most people ignored. She found these moments comforting, and they reminded her that observing carefully was as important as performing her tasks. As the days went on, she continued to document her observations mentally. She remembered the smallest words and actions. She knew that the details would matter when she decided to act. She remained quiet but attentive. She had developed a mental map of the building and the people in it, including the bullies and their habits. She began to notice that some of the coworkers who had been silent were now looking at her differently. Their expressions were a mix of curiosity and respect. They were starting to see that she was not easily shaken. She sensed that the bullies had not yet realized the depth of her patience and intelligence. She used this advantage to maintain control of her work and composure. One day, the bullies tried to trick her by creating a mess that would require her to leave her usual path. They expected confusion or frustration. She paused and assessed the situation. She found an efficient way to clean up the mess without losing time or focus. She kept her movements calm and deliberate, and silently noted who had done it and how they watched and felt the first signs that she was not a simple target. During the afternoon, she encountered a file on the floor again. She recognized it as a test and bent down slowly to pick it up. She examined it carefully and then returned it to the shelf where it belonged. She did not show any sign of recognition. She had learned that maintaining calm while understanding the situation gave her power without confrontation. She found moments to breathe and reflect. She opened windows when she could and let the sunlight touch her hands and face. She remembered previous jobs and challenges. She recalled how patience and observation had helped her survive before. She felt a quiet confidence that she could handle the situation with the bullies because she had survived harder. Days the cleaner began to see small cracks in the bullies' behavior. They laughed less confidently and whispered more. They seemed unsure and slightly cautious. Her calm presence was disrupting their sense of control. She continued to clean and observe. Without giving them any reaction at home, she reviewed the day in her small notebook. She wrote down details about the bullies, the timing of their actions, and the reactions of coworkers. She organized her notes and reflected on patterns she understood. That the documentation was not just for memory, but for understanding the dynamics in the building and preparing for future actions by the end of the third week. Yes. She had developed a routine that balanced observation and work. She knew where the bullies would be and when they were still present, but their arrogance was starting to crack. She moved through the building with quiet confidence and resilience, and felt that the next stage of her journey was approaching. By the fourth week, the cleaner had grown more aware of the building and the people around her. She had studied the patterns of the bullies and could predict where they would be and what they would do. She moved with confidence and purpose, knowing that her patience and observation were her strongest tools. One morning, she arrived to find that someone had deliberately left a wet mop in the middle of the hallway. The bullies were hiding around the corner, watching her reaction. She paused for a moment and considered the situation. She could see their anticipation. She bent down slowly and moved the mop to the side without a word. She continued her path carefully and noted each step in her mind. Their expressions changed from amusement to slight confusion because she had not reacted the way they expected. Throughout the morning, the bullies tried different tactics. They blocked her way in the stairwell and whispered words meant to humiliate her. She remained calm and focused on her work. She did not respond to their provocations. Instead, she observed their behavior and timing and recorded every detail mentally. She knew that her silence was stronger than any argument and that her composure would reveal their weaknesses over time. During lunch, she sat in her usual corner and ate quietly. Her eyes watched the movement of others. She noticed the subtle expressions of coworkers who were beginning to see her in a different light. Some looked curious, and others seemed to respect her patience and calm demeanor. She realized that not everyone was indifferent, and that small gestures of attention could be powerful. Bullies grew increasingly frustrated because their usual tactics no longer worked. They tried to create obstacles and distractions, but she navigated through them with careful precision. She continued to clean and organize the building without losing focus. Her mind was calm and alert, and she noticed the first cracks in the confidence of the bullies. One afternoon, she found a deliberate mess outside conference room. She knew immediately who was responsible. She paused to consider the best way to handle it. She could clean it quickly, or she could use it as a way to show her composure. She chose to clean it efficiently and carefully, noting each detail of the act in her mind. Her calmness began to unsettle the bullies because it demonstrated control they could not undermine. She discovered small ways to make her work more efficient and less interrupted. She organized supplies and predicted the movements of coworkers and bullies alike. She found quiet corners to rest briefly and continued to observe. Without drawing attention to herself, she noticed that the bullies were beginning to doubt their own tactics and timing. During one of the breaks, she spoke softly with a coworker who had shown concern. She shared a few words about the work and thanked them for their attention. She still did not reveal much about herself, but the small exchange strengthened her understanding that not everyone was against her. Some were simply unaware and needed a gentle introduction to her presence. Bullies tried to create tension by leaving files and obstacles in her path. She navigated carefully around each one and noted the timing and method of each act. She realized that repetition was their weakness and that her patience allowed her to see patterns they were unaware of. She moved with precision and calm, knowing that observation was her most powerful weapon. She found moments of quiet reflection near the windows where sunlight touched her hands and face. She remembered other challenges she had faced and the strength she had found in patience and observation. She felt a quiet confidence that she could handle the situation with the bullies because she had survived similar challenges before. Throughout the week, she reviewed the day in her small notebook, writing down every detail of the bullies' actions, the reactions of coworkers, and her own observations. She organized her notes and reflected on patterns She understood that these notes would be important when she decided to act and reveal the truth about the harassment. By the end of the 4th week, she noticed that the bullies were more cautious and less certain. Their laughter was less frequent, and their whispers carried tension instead of amusement. She moved through the building with quiet confidence and resilience. She knew that the next stage of her journey would come soon, when she would act and reveal the strength and intelligence that they had underestimated. Her calm demeanor and careful observation had shifted the balance. She had not needed confrontation or anger. She had used patience and awareness to create an invisible strength that the bullies could not break. The building had become a place where she moved with purpose and understanding, and the atmosphere began to change subtly around. As the week closed, she walked home with a sense of quiet determination. She reviewed the events in her mind and prepared herself for the coming moments. She knew that the time would come when the patience and preparation would reveal the truth, and that the bullies would finally see the strength that had been hidden. Beneath her quiet exterior, the 5th week arrived, and the cleaner felt a quiet readiness. She moved through the building with calm assurance. She had observed the bullies and their patterns and had recorded every detail in her mind and in her notebook. She knew the time had come to act with clarity and purpose. One morning she arrived to find the usual obstacles in her path. The bullies had scattered papers and left small spills. They were confident that they could provoke her as they had before. She paused for a moment and then began to clean. Each action was deliberate and precise. She moved with careful observation, noting the expressions and timing of each act. The bullies gathered near the elevators. They whispered and laughed quietly. Expecting a reaction, she continued her work silently. They watched with growing uncertainty. Their confidence was starting to waver because she did not respond. She did not show anger or frustration. She moved with calm and purpose, and her eyes noted every gesture. During the mid-morning rush, she entered the main office. She saw the bullies attempting to create a distraction by blocking the entrance. She stepped carefully around them with steady movements and continued her tasks. She knew that confrontation was not yet necessary. Observation and presence were her allies. The bullies were beginning to doubt their own actions. She gathered the documentation she had kept for weeks. The notes contained every act of harassment, the timing and details. She knew that the evidence was now clear and undeniable. She moved quietly to the management office and requested a brief meeting. She presented the documentation calmly and methodically, showing each incident and noting the dates and times. The managers listened carefully and asked questions while she provided clear, factual responses. The bullies were called in to hear the discussion. Their expressions changed as the evidence was presented. They had assumed their actions were unnoticed or unimportant. They were unprepared for the clarity and calm of her presentation. They could not speak effectively against the facts, and their arrogance began to crumble. Management took immediate steps to address the situation. They spoke with the bullies and clarified the consequences of their behavior. They apologized to the cleaner for the harassment and for the delay in recognizing her treatment. The atmosphere in the office shifted subtly as respect for the cleaner grew. Her patience, observation, and calm composure had led to this moment of truth throughout. The afternoon co-workers approached her quietly. Some expressed admiration, and others offered apologies for not noticing sooner. She received each interaction with gentle acknowledgement and a soft smile. She understood that respect and understanding were earned, not demanded. And she had shown that through her actions, the bullies were left to reflect on their actions. Their laughter had disappeared, and their whispers were filled with uncertainty. They realized that their treatment of the cleaner had been both ineffective and revealing. Of their own weaknesses, she had never reacted with anger, but had used patience and awareness to reveal the truth and shift the balance of power. By the end of the day, the building had settled into a new rhythm. The cleaner moved through the hallways with the same calm assurance. She continued her work with care and precision, but now she was no longer invisible. Her presence was respected, and her quiet strength recognized the small victories of patience. Observation and integrity had reshaped the environment. She found a moment near a window to rest and reflect. The sunlight warmed her hands and face. She thought about the weeks that had passed and the challenges she had faced. She remembered moments of doubt and quiet determination, and felt the satisfaction of having acted with clarity and purpose. Her calm had transformed a situation of harassment into one of respect, and understanding the bullies no longer attempted to provoke her. They adjusted their behavior and learned from the experience. Her patience had taught a lesson that anger could not have delivered. She moved through the building knowing that she had maintained dignity and strength while bringing about change without confrontation. That evening, she walked home with a sense of quiet triumph. She reviewed the events of the day in her mind and felt the satisfaction of accomplishment she had faced. The challenge with observation, patience, and clarity and had created a result that was fair and just. The building had become a place of respect, and the bullies had been left frozen. By the evidence of her calm strength, she sat at home and reflected. On the journey, she understood that the power of patience, observation, and quiet determination could overcome the loud and aggressive. She had shown that dignity and careful planning could transform a situation, and that true strength was often invisible. Until it was revealed in the right moment, she closed her notebook and felt the quiet assurance of a challenge met and overcome. Overcome after the events of the 5th week, the cleaner returned to her routine with a new sense of confidence. She walked through the hallways with quiet assurance, and her steps were steady and deliberate. She knew that the past weeks had changed the dynamic of the building and her role within it. She had earned respect through observation, patience, and calm strength each morning. She arrived before the sun and began her work with care. She organized supplies and cleaned each area meticulously. Her focus was on the work and on maintaining the atmosphere of respect that had begun to take root. The bullies no longer attempted to provoke her. Their presence was quieter and less threatening. She moved through the halls aware of everything but unshaken coworkers, who had been silent or indifferent before now, offered small gestures of acknowledgement. They nodded or smiled. When she passed, some even offered assistance with supplies or opened doors. She accepted these gestures, graciously understanding that change took time and that her calm strength had opened the way for these new interactions. She noticed that the building itself felt different. The early morning rush was still busy, but there was a sense of order and respect. Her presence was no longer invisible. She moved with purpose and confidence in others, responded with quiet recognition. She felt growing connection to the place and to the people within it. During lunch, she sat in her usual corner, but now other coworkers joined her occasionally. They spoke softly and shared small stories about their work. She listened attentively and offered quiet acknowledgement. Her patience and calm presence encouraged others to be themselves. She found these moments peaceful and nourishing. Bullies were still present, but their behavior had shifted. They were cautious and no longer relied on mockery or disruption to feel powerful. They observed her as she worked and sometimes offered polite greetings. She noticed the change and understood that respect had been established without confrontation. Their previous arrogance had been replaced by tentative understanding. One afternoon, she encountered a new challenge. A large spill had occurred in the lobby and required careful attention. She moved quickly and efficiently, coordinating with other staff to clean the area. She kept her composure and directed actions calmly. Her presence guided the response, and others followed her lead. The incident passed without incident and demonstrated her leadership through quiet action. At home, she reflected on the past weeks. She wrote in her notebook, noting the changes in the building, the responses of coworkers, and the shift in the behavior of the bullies. She recorded observations and reflections, not out of anger or frustration, but to understand patterns in human behavior. She felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that calm observation could create meaningful change. She discovered small routines to keep her work smooth and her mind clear. She arranged her cleaning schedule to anticipate busy periods and coordinated with staff to avoid conflicts. She found moments of quiet observation where she could watch interactions and note details. She understood that awareness and patience were continuous practices that required attention. The respect she had earned allowed her to feel a sense of belonging in the building. She was no longer the invisible worker who moved quietly in the background. Her actions were acknowledged and valued, and her presence contributed to the overall environment. She felt a quiet pride in her ability to maintain integrity and strength without anger. or confrontation throughout the week, she continued to observe the bullies and coworkers. She noted small gestures of change and adaptation. Her mental map of the building and its people grew clearer. She understood the dynamics and continued to navigate with awareness and calm. She had learned that understanding human behavior required patience and careful attention. The building became a place where she moved with ease and confidence. Her work was respected and her presence was recognized. The bullies had adapted their behavior and the atmosphere had shifted subtly. She continued to clean with care and efficiency while observing. In understanding the people around her, she reflected on the lessons she had learned. The power of patience, observation, and quiet strength had transformed her experience. She had faced harassment and challenges and had used calm determination to create change. She understood that true power often came from maintaining composure and understanding rather than confrontation. By the end of the week, she felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. She had navigated a complex social environment with patience. In clarity, she continued her work with dedication and care and knew that the respect she had earned was lasting. Her quiet strength had transformed both her experience and the environment. Around the seventh week, the cleaner had fully settled. Into the rhythm of the building, she moved with calm assurance, and her presence was no longer questioned. The bullies had adjusted their behavior, and other coworkers treated her with quiet respect. She felt a sense of stability and awareness that allowed her to work efficiently and with confidence each morning. She arrived early and began her routine. She organized supplies, cleaned carefully, and moved through the hallways, observing the subtle movements of everyone around her. She noticed small gestures of cooperation and respect from coworkers and the bullies themselves. She recorded these observations mentally and appreciated the gradual change in the atmosphere during the mid-morning rush. She encountered a minor challenge. A broken machine had spilled water near the entrance. She moved quickly to cordon off the area and began cleaning. She coordinated with other staff to ensure safety and efficiency. Her calm guidance helped resolve the situation smoothly and demonstrated her quiet leadership through action. She noticed that even the bullies were watching her work with attention rather than mockery. Lunch came a time for quiet reflection. She sat in her usual corner and observed coworkers interacting. She noted the subtle changes in conversations and gestures. She had learned to read these small signs of behavior and found satisfaction in the positive changes. She continued to eat simply and mindfully, enjoying the peaceful moments throughout the day. She managed small tasks with precision and care. She anticipated needs before they were asked and maintained a presence that was steady and reassuring. She noticed that coworkers were more willing to assist and collaborate with her, and that the building operated more smoothly as a result of her calm and consistent work. She reflected on the progress she had made. She had faced harassment and challenges and had responded with patience and observation. Her quiet strength had transformed the environment and earned respect. She understood that the power of composure and awareness could bring about change that anger or confrontation never could. The bullies no longer sought to provoke her. They had adapted to her calm demeanor and recognized that their previous tactics were ineffective. She observed them carefully and noted that they were still learning to navigate the new dynamic. She felt no satisfaction in their discomfort, but rather a quiet acknowledgement that change was taking place. One afternoon, she encountered a situation that required careful judgment. A coworker had accidentally made a mistake that could have caused a problem in the office. She moved quickly to correct the issue. While maintaining a calm presence, she guided the coworker through the steps needed to fix the problem and observed the reactions of those around her. The incident passed smoothly and demonstrated the value of patience and guidance. She continued to document her observations mentally. She noted patterns in behavior, small gestures of respect and cooperation, and the gradual changes in the bullies' actions. She understood that awareness and attention to detail were essential for maintaining a positive environment and for understanding human behavior. Building had become a place where she moved with confidence and assurance. Her work was respected and her presence valued. She continued to clean and organize with care while observing and understanding the people around her. She had created an environment where calm and observation were more powerful than aggression or mockery. She reflected on the lessons of the past weeks The power of patience, observation, and quiet strength had transformed her experience. She had faced challenges and harassment and had responded with clarity and composure. She understood that true influence came from maintaining integrity and awareness, rather than reacting with anger during. The evening she reviewed the events of the day. In her mind, she noted the small gestures of cooperation and respect. She reflected on her own growth and the transformation of the environment around her. She felt a quiet fulfillment in knowing that her patience and observation had created lasting change by the end of the week. She felt a sense of accomplishment and stability. She continued her work with care and dedication and knew that the respect she had earned would endure. Her quiet strength and consistent observation had transformed both her experience. In the atmosphere of the building, she moved forward with confidence and awareness, ready to face any challenge with calm and clarity. The 8th week began with the cleaner moving through the building with quiet confidence. She had established a rhythm, and her presence was acknowledged and respected by most of the staff, including the bullies who had grown cautious and measured in their actions. She focused on her work, moving carefully through each hallway and room, observing the subtle interactions of the people around her. Early in the morning, she began her routine, cleaning the floors and organizing supplies. She noticed small changes in the behavior of coworkers who now offered nods and smiles instead of ignoring her presence. The bullies remained in the building, but their previous attempts to mock or provoke her had diminished greatly. She felt a sense of calm, knowing that her patience and consistency had created a shift in the environment during the mid-morning rush. A minor incident occurred. A tray of papers had fallen near the main entrance. She moved quickly to gather them, coordinating with nearby staff to prevent any accidents. Her movements were deliberate and calm, and she noted the reactions of those around her, including the bullies who watched silently. She understood that her composed response reinforced the respect she had earned. Lunch, she sat in her usual corner, observing the conversations and interactions of coworkers. She noted how small gestures of kindness and cooperation had increased. She continued to eat simply and quietly, reflecting on the changes in the environment and the slow but steady transformation of the bullies' behavior throughout the day. She completed her tasks with precision and care. She anticipated needs before they were requested and maintained a calm presence that influenced the atmosphere. She noticed that other staff were more willing to assist and collaborate, and the building operated more smoothly. Because of her influence, one afternoon, she encountered a new challenge. A small spill had occurred near the stairwell and required immediate attention. She moved efficiently to contain and clean the spill while coordinating with staff to ensure safety. Her calm leadership guided the response, and the incident was resolved without any conflict. She noted the behavior of the bullies, who were now observing with attention rather than attempting disruption. She reflected on the progress of the past weeks. The environment had shifted from tension and harassment to one of quiet respect and cooperation. Her patience, observation, and consistent actions had transformed the dynamics of the workplace. She understood that her strength came from maintaining composure and awareness, rather than responding with anger during the mid-afternoon. She spoke briefly with a coworker who had previously been indifferent. They shared a few words about the work, and the coworker offered thanks for her guidance. The small exchange reinforced her understanding that respect and recognition were often earned through consistent action and quiet strength rather than confrontation. The bullies were no longer a source of tension. Their behavior had adapted to her calm demeanor, and they engaged only when necessary. She continued to observe their interactions and noted small signs of understanding and cautious respect. She did not seek revenge or satisfaction in their change, but appreciated the quiet balance that had been established. She continued to maintain her documentation, mentally noting patterns in behavior, gestures of respect and cooperation, and the gradual shifts in the bullies' actions. She understood that attention to detail and continuous observation were essential to maintaining a positive environment and understanding human behavior. By the end of the day, she felt a sense of quiet fulfillment. She had navigated challenges with patience and clarity, and had created a lasting positive influence in the building. Her work was respected, her presence valued, and the atmosphere had changed. Subtly but meaningfully evening brought a moment of reflection. She considered the lessons, learned the growth she had achieved, and the transformation of those around her. She understood that calm observation and patient action had greater power than confrontation, and that her quiet strength had made a lasting impact. As the week progressed, she continued her routine with the same dedication and care. She moved through the hallways, cleaning and organizing, while observing and understanding the people around her. Her presence had become a stabilizing influence, and her actions had created an environment of respect and cooperation. By the end of the 8th week, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had transformed her experience and the environment through patience, composure, and awareness. She continued her work with quiet confidence, knowing that her consistent presence and actions had created lasting positive change in the building and in the people around her.